From the New York Times, to change the subject, a hard segue, as it were, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Ben & Jerry's accuses Unilever of firing its CEO for political reasons. Ben & Jerry said in a court filing that its parent company had ousted its chief executive, David Stever, without approval from the ice cream maker's board. Well, Ben & Jerry's used to be great. I remember when I was a kid and Cherry Garcia was becoming popular. Everybody loved that. Weird flavors you didn't normally get, and they were very delicious. And now, all of a sudden, it is the cringiest of cringe cult garbage. And you've got these billboards. I know my rights. Colin Kaepernick's change the world. Indeed. So the long story short, the CEO was fired, and the individuals at Ben & Jerry's say that that part of the agreement with the sale was that they would be continued to engage in their social mission of the company. Apparently, Unilever doesn't like it, and so now they're being sued. They're accused of firing the CEO because he allowed the ice cream maker to speak out on political issues. In a filing, Ben & Jerry said Unilever had fired David Stever because of his commitment to his company's social mission rather than his job performance. He has held the ice cream company's top job since 2023. We don't buy Ben & Jerry's anymore because they're psychotic. It's an insane company. But I do find this to be absolutely hilarious in that it epitomizes meritocracy versus ideology. Ben & Jerry's, I can only assume, is hurting if Unilever would violate their contract and fire the guy knowing they were going to get into a lawsuit. I have to imagine if your company prioritizes social issues over a product, i.e. you're an activist nonprofit and not a for-profit ice cream maker, you are going to lose money. And here we are. So I guess what I can say is woke is broke, another victory. And this is the other side of the Bud Light coin, or the other side of the Bud Light hill. Bud Light got woke. They felt that burn really bad. Now, on the corporate side of things, they're saying purge the woke and get it out.
I mean, you do have a product that you have to sell, and the way that Ben & Jerry's behaves makes it clear that to at least a third of the country, they don't want you to buy their product. And I mean, look, ice cream is an everybody thing. I love ice cream, right? Like, I don't think there are a lot of people that don't love ice cream. And to just be like, oh, well, we don't want you, buying our product, or to be so inundated with the social issues, it's got to hurt business.
So this goes back to, at the top, we were talking about the terrorism against Tesla and in BLM as well. And I think that this is going to be a trend now where companies are going to get back to basics. Traditionally in this country, companies did not get involved in politics because why piss off pretty much
because
any
Republicans
opinion.
buy shoes too, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. Like on like Israel-Palestine, you are going to offend half your audience, so just stay out of it. And that was the traditional wisdom, but I think companies could not do that because of intimidation by the left. And a lot of that was regulatory intimidation. Yeah. So in a lot of these businesses, especially in media, you can't piss off your regulator. And once the left locked hands with regulators, a lot of these companies had to do what they did. So now that you've got the government pressure coming off, the activist pressure coming off, now they can actually look again at the bottom line. And, you look at a company like Disney, and that is just suicidal what they've done. Yeah. They know who their audience is. They're not that dumb. I mean, any of us know who their audience is.
Part of me thinks that Disney did the things they did because they believed that they had more influence than they do.
I think it is. My prediction with the Bud Light story was that we were going to find out it was going to be some millennial woman who had just gotten promoted to the position who changed their policy from frat bro to feminist lesbian. And what did we discover? Indeed, it was a millennial liberal woman who recently got a promotion and said, no more fat white guys buying and drinking beer at the grill. We want trans people.
She said, we want young drinkers, was what she said. That was crazy. Young drinkers.
That's true.
But
they
in
were
addition, probably
attracting a new audience.
With Dylan Mulvaney, yeah.
And boy, did that really destroy the company, because it turns out that even 20-year-old people would much prefer a beer commercial where a guy is flipping a burger as opposed to Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah, like hitting a baseball. I mean, something.
So I used to teach MBA marketing, right? And it's like marketing 101 is you have to love your customer just the way they are. Yes. You don't fix them. You don't change them. You don't lecture them. Because if you do that, they're going to find another boyfriend, right? They're going to go find somebody else who produces a product that is catered for them. And so corporate America, It's taken them a while. I think another element of that has been the sort of shareholder advisory services, which is this way that woke can sort of insert itself into the financial system and force companies to do weird things like, like Disney doing this or like Exxon doing green energy or just bizarre things. But fundamentally, I think that finally they're waking up, they're shaking out of this. You have to love your customers just the way they are.
Yeah, I mean, you can't think that you're going to dictate opinions to your customers. You have to go to people where they are.
Yeah, but take a look at Ben & Jerry's. It's always been a leftist company. I'd argue that their leadership was probably just saying, we've always been a progressive company. We're always going to be, so we just go with that trend. But I think as it turns out, what is perceived to be their customer is incorrect. And people want to buy ice cream. And it's off-putting when they engage in these kind of practices.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, actually, it's probably unfair. They made Americone Dream, Stephen Colbert's waffle fudge ice cream or whatever. That's just a late night host. And then didn't Jimmy Kimmel get one that was weird with potato chips or something like that?
I think so.
Potato chips are good. Colin Kaepernick was just really off. But I do feel like they thought they were targeting progressives and they were a social mission company.
They probably have their core audience, which is those progressives, and they have a whole bunch of people who just eat it because it tastes good and they don't care about the politics, and they were losing them.
I think these companies thought woke was mainstream.
Maybe, yeah.
And that's why Target put the LGBT tuck-friendly bathing suits up in the front where kids would see it, and then parents freaked out, and they were like, oh man, was that not the right thing to do? As the woke began to dominate media, they created a perception that they were the majority, and most people were scared to speak up out of fear of getting canceled. You know what's really fascinating about this ideology of wokeness? 2 points. The reason why I think Gen Z is going to break from the left is that you take a look at the Teslas. This is not so much about Gen Z. This is more about regular, millennials or whatever. We were all told to buy electric cars. Colbert got one. 2 years later, they're torching them, shooting at them. So that was a mistake. We were all told we were allowed to make certain jokes. Sarah Silverman lost a movie role because she did blackface at a time when it was totally appropriate to do. Jimmy Kimmel did blackface. Why was she being targeted? What I see, what is likely to happen now is the young kids, the Gen Zers who grew up in an era where you could not know what was socially acceptable or not, and you were constantly threatened. You were living like a rabbit wound up so tight you could burst at any moment. They're going to find reprieve in people like Donald Trump and people on the right who are just like, bro, I don't care what you call me. You can say gay and you can say retarded. And people are going to be like, I can relax now. I think young people are going to move in that direction. Not to mention, I do want to stress this too, because we didn't get into Harry Sisson story, but Harry Sisson, of course, was, according to the left, preying upon young women. Viciously, this liberal young man, this Democrat, was preying like a merciless predator on these poor young women.
As a priest.
And right now, there's a story that we covered a while ago, but it's going viral again. About half of young men, 18 to 25, have never approached a woman. Or in the last year have not approached a woman. Somewhere around like a third of those guys have never done it, and most haven't done it in a year. Nobody wants to live that way. Nobody wants to live that way. And that's the world created by woke. Harry Sisson is under fire right now because he was sexting a bunch of different women at the same time while claiming he wasn't. So he was playing these women. And a bunch of people on the right are like, don't need to play your man. It's what young men do. And I'm like, no. This guy would likely advocate for you to be imprisoned if you were caught doing these things. He'd say these predators should be canceled and banned. And then behind the scenes, he's doing exactly what he claims to not do. He tweets about, oh no, the country is abandoning women and women's rights. And then while he's advocating for these feminist ideals, of course, he is anything but. People like him create this world young people don't want to live in. So I think we're going to see a snap back. And I think that's what you see with Donald Trump being the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. Ben & Jerry's firing their CEO is the other side of the Bud Light hill. We were fighting like crazy. Bud Light went woke, and we said, enough. Kid Rock unloaded a full auto machine gun on that Bud Light, and everybody rallied around it, ditched Bud Light to this day. Surprisingly, yeah, it's maintained. And they've struggled to recover. This was an attack on a market attack on this corporation for being woke. Now on the other side of this, the corporations are abandoning woke intentionally because they see the writing on the wall. Nobody wants to live in that world. And I think it's going to fade away. But we'll see. a drowning person is dangerous, right? When they say when you're going to go rescue someone drowning, you got to go behind them. Otherwise, they'll thrash at you and drag you down with them. So as the woke gets smothered out of existence, I'm wondering to what degree they may weather underground or worse. I mean, they already are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a sense of the levels of violence that they'll resort to, but they clearly will resort to violence.
Well, thank goodness
already
we have
are.
this massive military where, Trump is already bringing them back for the border. And, that's an open question, is declaring martial law in some of these cities if things get too violent. So fundamentally, normally I criticize the massive size of our military. But in this case, if you want to dance, go for it, fellas.
It is worth noting that, like, during the time that the Weather Underground was really active, the economy was kind of crap. The 70s were, a lost decade. The economy was garbage. If Trump's economic plans do work the way that he says they will, and we have a resurgence of productivity in this country, and we have an economic boom, a lot of the people that are PO'd and look at the U.S. and say capitalism sucks and it's not fair and blah, 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 they'll have opportunities that they don't have right now, and that will fix a lot of the problems.
And that goes to what Tim was talking about, Gen X or Gen Z. Gen Z is an almost perfect, copy of Gen X. Like the entire origin story here, right? You had the crappy 70s, you had the crappy, all this stuff that happened in the last couple of years, Bidenflation and the COVID and the violence and all this. And, if we could see Gen Z be like a super version of X. I think the other key here is that when Reagan won office, the media were savage to him. I mean, they were just as bad as they are to Trump now. They compared him to Hitler. They said he was going to start World War III. Just down the line, he was racist. He hated gays. I mean, every single one, because they just play that on repeat every single time. How many states did he win in re-election?
48.
Yeah.
I think it was 48.
Right. So it doesn't work. And I think particularly when you pair it, having gone through the valley of darkness and then coming out into the light, I think Gen Z already like Trump was within 5 points on Gen Z, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is crazy for young people, right? Traditionally, that's like 20 points. So I have great hopes for Gen Z.
What do you say? 5 points in what way? What happened with?
He in the election, he was within 5 points in the vote among 20-somethings.
Oh, so he took 45% essentially
Yeah.
of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on this.
47,
this
yeah,
Gen
right.
Z revolution. It does feel like the 80s. It feels like they had to suffer through hairspray, big hair, ugly looking makeup, and not understanding why they're not attracted to those girls, but being told they're supposed to be. And then all of a sudden the internet appears and they're like, whoa, manipulation. It's different for them because they had the internet the entire time. And they were, but so that manipulation is just, I mean, the grossness, and it stays with you your entire life when you've been tricked by being told like blackface is okay. No, blackface is not okay. Be afraid. No. You deal with that maybe 3 times. And then if you see a group of people that aren't into it, you're with that group.
It's kind of wild that we grew up on Jackass.
Yeah.
The CKY videos. Everybody was watching Johnny Knoxville punch Bam Margera in the balls. George Carlin was going up on stage in the early 90s, and he has a bit that he famously did in his comedy special, in his tours, where he would say every possible racial slur he could think of as fast as he could, and then called 2 prominent black comedians the N-word. And that's
One of the best comedians of all time.
Indeed. And South Park and Family Guy, and we somehow ended up in this world. Well, we're coming out the other side of it, so that's good. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.